Joe has had his moments. 2 balls and 2 strikes on him. Here's the pitch on the way. A swing and a belt. Left field. Way back. Blue Jays win it. The Blue Jays are World Series champions as Joe Carter hits a 3-run home run in the 9th inning, and the Blue Jays have repeated as World Series champions. Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life.
It is Sportsfeld Storytime. We are looking back and completing our look back at the 1993 Toronto Blue Jays. In the last episode, we touched them all. We finally saw the Blue Jays win their back-to-back World Series championships, a defining moment in our childhoods, a defining moment that cements you as a Blue Jays fan forever and ever. Joe Carter going Yahtzee off Mitch Williams to secure the World Series at home. Just a great moment, and immediately followed by, I mean, listen, I speak for both of us, but I'm pretty sure we thought the Jays were also going to be good the next year. There's no reason to believe they wouldn't be.
We were talking last episode about sort of how things get put into our brains. I was pretty sure until recently, not today, but like recently, that the Blue Jays were good until the season went on strike.
You're thinking of the Expos as the Montreal
That's
fans.
exactly it, though. I have this memory that apparently must be a false memory and must not have happened. But I have this memory of thinking, I can't believe the strike happened. We were going to get a Toronto-Montreal World Series. And the Blue Jays were going to three-peat. And very clearly, looking at the standings, that is absolutely not what happened.
Well, the Blue Jays played 115 games in, am I doing the math right? Yes, I am. In 1994, they finished 55-60. They were third in the American League East, the first year of 3 divisions in each league. They were 16 games behind the New York Yankees, a sub-500 team with a lot of familiar faces still sticking around. John Allrood, who's 25 years old, by the way, at this time, continued to absolutely rake a 124 OPS plus, 297, 393, 477. Paul Molitor was still on the team at 37. He was unbelievable again, hitting 341, 410, 518. Joe Carter, another very good year power-wise, had hit 27 home runs, driven in 103. On his way, really, you could say, to a 40-ish home run year. But there was some, it wasn't quite the same sort of stacked all the way through. Pat Henkin, Juan Guzman, Todd Stottlemyre, Dave Stewart, Al Leiter remains your starters. Stewart and Leiter and Guzman, all not very good. ERAs well above 5. And then it was the pieces other than the guys we mentioned. Dick Schofield was the shortstop. Ed Sprague, not really a star player. A guy named Mike Huff.
I
have no memory of Mike Huff. I don't know how you remember Mike Huff.
Young Carlos Delgado played some games in left. Alex Gonzalez at short. A lot of guys who had become like part of the mediocre late 90s teams. Obviously, Carlos Delgado is amazing, and I'm not slagging Carlos Delgado, but guys who were like, I identify with those like mid to late 90s Blue Jays.
It's a very interesting team because when you look at it, sort of the top line view that I just did there is, Alomar, Olerud, Carter, Molitor, they all played pretty well. They all continued to be above average. Even Mike Huff, who I, again, never heard of before today, had a good year, but they really didn't put it together. The pitching sort of betrayed them, and the Yankees and the Orioles were very good teams. Yankees, you're looking at your Don Mattingly, Wade Boggs, Bernie Williams, Paul O'Neill, Danny Tartable sort of era.
And they started great too. They were 14-10 after April, and then May hit, but they were 500 well into June. And then at 30-30, they go from 30-30 to 32-44 by the end of the month. And that was kind of all she wrote.
Well, it is now official. No more regular season, no extended version of the playoffs, and for the first time since 1904, no World Series, Brendan. It's not pretty. Yogi Berra said it ain't over till it's over. He was talking about the 73 Mets. Now Yogi could say this one's definitely over. The World Series has been played on in the midst of two world wars, in the midst of the Depression era, but now in 1994, in the midst of the greed era in Major League Baseball. No World Series, no more baseball this year. TSN's Rod Smith reports.
Incredible. And then the league stops. We talked about last episode, we talked about how crazy it would have been and how poorly we would have handled them, the dramatics of that World Series and the ups and downs of those games and thinking they were going to lose and then winning in dramatic fashion. I am curious, and I know we just went through, of course, seasons being halted and interrupted by coronavirus, but I don't know how it would strike me as an adult to have this team I love suddenly stop playing 115 games into the season and have that hanging over the whole year. I know that as a kid, I was staunchly, obviously look at me now, always going to love baseball, and it didn't bother me a lot. But I don't know about you. I knew a lot of people that would say in the following years that really turned them off of baseball.
Yeah, I agree. It obviously likewise did not turn me off baseball, but I also completely understand it doing that. And I don't think I understood it then. I remember hearing the argument as a kid and being like, why wouldn't you just go back and watch baseball? I don't get it. But then we've seen just by the popularity of the sport over the last 20 years, it must have turned a lot of people off baseball. And obviously baseball does everything they can to push people away as much as possible. But it's one of those moments. I remember when they went on strike, it was in the summer. I was still in baseball camp. So I was playing baseball. So I didn't feel like I remember being disappointed the season had stopped, but it wasn't a devastating thing because baseball was still around in my life. And it was and it was August. They made it almost through the whole season anyway, which is also kind of nuts. And then you're like, okay, baseball back in the fall, in the spring, whatever, always. But having now been an adult living through the NHL work stoppages and NBA work stoppages and constant threat of baseball work stoppages, I kind of get the attitude of no, fuck this sport.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do too, especially as, they would come out of this. If you were a huge Jays fan, right? They were the years prior, they were, 89 wins, 86 wins, 91, 96, 95, the finishing first in the division, second in the division, first. And then suddenly they go on a run where they're third in the division, then they win 56 games in their last, then they win 74 games in their fourth of 5, then they win 76 games in their 5 of 5. They don't go back above 500 again until 1998 when they have Roger Clemens as their guy. They really go through a spell where they're not just mediocre, they're bad. And then they come back up and they don't go, and I remember this quite well, I'm sure you do too. They didn't finish higher than third in the division again until 2006. It's 13 years again for them to be even decent. They're not even close. They're not even single digits back. They're single digits back of the lead once in 2000, and then don't do it again until they win the East in 2015. That's crazy.
Yeah, it really was. I guess, especially in retrospect, just the how quickly it went from literally winning 2 World Series to just bad teams. Not even there were a few just mediocre teams there, but there were some real dog shit Jays teams that period. And there would always be vague flickers of hope occasionally. Like I remember one year, I can't remember what season it was, must have been late 90s, early 2000s. Where I remember they went on like a 14-game win streak in May or June, which they did, and they would do this a lot over those few years. And you'd be like, oh, okay, Halliday's here. He's pitching great. Delgado's raking. And then it was just like, oh, they're bad again. Like it's crazy how 94 kicked off literally 20 years of just being shit.
It's, you know, it's amazing. It's amazing looking back at it and sort of having that bird's eye view of like how lucky we got in terms of when we became fans. Because
totally,
you know, if you were 5 years younger, you would not have the Carter connection. You would not have any of that, and you would spend the whole time being like, why does anybody care about this team? Like ever.
If we're doing like the how old were you when kind of thing. If I was the same age. If I was born 5 years later, as you said, so I was the same age as I would have been for the 1999 Blue Jays. 1999 Blue Jays were 6 games above 500, so not bad, but still 14 games out of the division lead. It was guys like Pat Henkin was back. I think Clemens might have been on that team. Shannon Stewart, you know, like an okay team, not a great team. Young Chris Carpenter, no Clemens there. Young Doc, but it was like you wouldn't like they were okay, but you don't make lifelong fans by being okay. They would be basically how we paid attention to the Maple Leafs for 20 years, in a way.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison.
Like just like fine, they're okay, and maybe next year they'll be better. But I feel like for people of our not necessarily our generation, but like of our age bracket, our specific age bracket. The 92-93 teams meant that like baseball wasn't only a thing we liked, it was like the biggest thing in the world. Because like when you're 7 and your team wins, it's the best and goes on a run, it's the best thing in the world. Mm-hmm. Like what do you care more about than being a 7 years old and your sports team winning?
Absolutely. And we talked about this a week and a half ago on the Springer episode. Just about how, and I think this all sort of ties together nicely, about how because of this, like the Jays making big moves, the Jays being a good team, it ignites me in a way that no other team does. Yeah. And it's just a product of that. And I think, I hope is sort of the difference here. I hope that two things, I hope that there are kids that 2015 did that for, that they really like crystallized, you know, how fun it was to watch Donaldson and how fun it was to watch Price and how fun it was to make that run and how much the city galvanized around that. I hope that happens. And I hope there are kids, and I'm sure of this one, I know this one, that there are kids that Raptors run in 2019 is going to do that for them. And they're a generation of kids that are just like, it's basketball for me. It's the Raptors for me, 100%. And we saw that. I think we see that a little bit right now with kids in their 20s. Vince Carter did that for a lot of kids, where like making basketball cool in the year 2000. If you were born in 1995 and you're just turning 30, like you're probably a Raptors fan. If you're 29, 30 years old right now, you're probably a Raptors fan. My age is way off, not 29, 30. If you're 25 right now, you're probably a Raptors fan, right?
Yeah.
Because you'd have been 5, 6, 7. So if you're 25, 26, 27, Raptors are probably your team. And if the Jays are good, that's probably nice to you. But you'll never replace that galvanization to the same as a kid that is currently 7, 8, 9 years old that watched Kawhi come through and grew up with the Raptors being a 50-win team every single year. I think it would be really easy that 20 years from now, if they were bad for 20 years and then suddenly you're 30 and the Raptors are good again, it'd be the greatest thing you ever saw in your life, just like it was for us in 2015.
Yeah, and I think that's why sort of the Blue Jays crowds in 2015, for better and for worse, were so loud and active, and how like Toronto loud was like the phrase some broadcaster used one year in I forget if that was 15 or 16, one of the playoff years. So it's Toronto loud in here. Because there was this, and like the bat flip was, I think, 20 years of frustration and disappointment being released at once. And it was like, I don't know if that's how it felt for you, but that's how it felt for me. Of like, I just wanted the Blue Jays to be good again. so badly throughout my like 20s and teen years. And then finally they were, and then like literally like the coolest home run possible happened, and in the coolest way by the coolest guy. And it was, I think, the reason that those crowds were so insane. And you and I went to a lot of those games together. Those crowds were nuts, and they were so loud because I'm sure there was young people there because it's Toronto, and I'm sure there were people who weren't galvanized by the 93 team there and involved and behind it because the whole city got behind it. But it does kind of feel like if you were of that age or older, those 2015 teams were really I've never got behind a team so hard as I did the 2015 team.
Yeah, we went through it when we talked about sort of the wild card game, and when we talked about that team anytime on the show, is like it was the only thing we talked about or did for like 2.5 months.
Yeah, we were going to bars to watch other teams that were near us in the standings. Like it's that will, even if the Jays are good again this year, or non-pandemic version, like I don't know if I'll ever be like, let's go to the bar to watch Cleveland Yankees because the Jays are chasing the Yankees. Like I'll watch the game, but to actually go out and I don't know. It's just, it was something else.
A 3-run walk-off home run made 26th against the White Sox in the ninth.
I agree with you. I think, and I'd love to be wrong about this, but I think if this 2021 team is really good, it'll be exciting and it'll be fun. It won't be the like rocket ship that was 2015 because it was 20 years of finally getting let out, and it was, it was really a reconnecting with going back to the beginning of this. We even saw, 2016 was fun, but not as fun. It was. Yeah. There's a difference between it sort of coming out of nowhere and it suddenly being the second half of the year versus like if they're good this year, it's like, yeah, they were a good team, probably wire to wire, unless they make a crazy move at the deadline. But I think it's interesting.
I think about this a lot, this question of like, how do you top 2015 as a Jays fan? And I think, obviously, they have to win the World Series to top 2015. And even then, like, obviously winning the World Series would be better than 2015. I'm not saying that's not better. Winning is always better. Mm-hmm. But I think it would be different. I don't know if it would be quite as wild.
Yeah, I think, to try to find the word, it'll be satisfying but not as exciting. How about that?
Yeah. And like it'll be, and also like if the Blue Jays are in the World Series, I'm sure my tone on this will change immediately.
It's still going to be fucking madness. Yeah.
But 2015, because of the experiences of 1994 to 2014, I think was something that will never and can never be replicated again unless they don't make the playoffs in another 20 years.
Yeah, which, I mean, God. Hope not. Anyway, that is our look back at the 1993 Toronto Blue Jays and a little bit of the afterwards. I hope there are kids. I hope there's kids that are able to get on board with the 2021 team and identify with Vlad and Bo and George Springer. And I hope there are kids, that are looking back one day, just like we are now, and just sort of like rediscovering how crazy Paul Molitor was and rediscovering how great, John Olerud was and being like, wow, they really had, Hyunjin Ryu and they really had Bo Bichette. And that was really incredible that they had all those guys at the same time. I genuinely hope that we have that same experience here. And maybe I feel like I'm turning into an old softy here, but I almost hope for it for the next generation more than I even hope for it for our own excitement, for our own celebration. I hope that it is able to grow a new generation of Blue Jays fans, because I love this team and I love the way that they mean something to our generation and to me and my friends. And I just hope that that's able to continue on because I like baseball a lot,
Yeah. I'm right there with you.
Anyway, that'll do it for another episode of Sportsfeld Storytime. Tons of fun. Love looking back at 1993 and learning things I maybe didn't know the first time around. We will have a brand new look back next month. A different team, a different time, a different group, a different fun. And in the meantime, if you have suggestions, drop it in there into the Discord. And of course, you are going to be getting your monthly mailbag coming up in just a matter of days. We thank you so much for your patronage. You guys are the absolute best, my favorite folks on the internet. In the meantime, we thank you so much for listening to Sportsfeld Storytime.